He was the kind of guy who made silence feel comfortable. That was the first thing I noticed about Ayan. Where most people fidgeted and quiet, filled it with useless noise or laughter that didn't belong, he leaned into it, like he trusted it. We met in college, both studying media arts, both drifting through days in our own lanes until a group project threw us together. After that, we kept finding reasons not to drift apart. Ayan was magnetic in the way that made you forget to be guarded. He laughed with his whole body, spoke with casual arrogance that somehow didn't offend, and always had this gentle confidence about him, like he knew exactly who he was, even if no one else did. He was also unmistakably straight. At least, that's what I believed. I'd seen him date girls, flirt shamelessly, charm his way into their lives and out of them just as quickly. I never questioned it, not out loud, but I noticed things. The way he looked at me sometimes, too long, too carefully, the way he sat too close on couches, his thigh pressed against mine without a flicker of self-consciousness, the way his hand lingered a moment longer on my shoulder than it needed to. It was easy to dismiss. Friends touch, friends laugh, friends share secrets at 3 a.m. when the world is too quiet for lies. I let myself believe that. We became close quickly. Late night. Assignments turned into long talks under warm lamplight. We'd sit by my window, legs folded, sharing music and half-eaten snacks, the kind of moments that weren't built for labels. He'd steal my hoodie when he stayed over, wear it like it belonged to him. I pretended it didn't matter, pretended I wasn't watching his hands when he rolled his sleeves, pretended my heart didn't jump when he smiled at something I said like it was more than just a joke. Then one night we were lying on the floor of my apartment, lights off, just the flicker of a film playing on the wall, some indie drama he'd insisted I watch. I don't remember the title, just the warmth of him beside me. His head was tilted back, resting against the cushion, and I could feel the soft exhale of his breath every few seconds. The world outside might have been moving, but in that room, time held its breath. I reached for the popcorn bowl without thinking, and our hands touched. Not just brushed, touched. His fingers didn't pull away. Neither did mine. He looked over at me then. Not a glance. A look. His eyes searched my face as though trying to find the words I hadn't dared speak aloud. I froze. Everything in me wanted to say something, to ask what we were doing, what this meant, but I didn't. I smiled like an idiot and looked away. My chest ached with something I didn't have the name for. He didn't say anything either. Just let his hand stay there, warm against mine, until the film ended and the screen faded to black. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was imagining it. But the thing about unspoken moments is that they hang in the air long after the silence is gone. You can feel them in the way someone walks into a room, in the pause before they say your name. That night as we climbed into bed, separate sides. Always, he said, "You're weird, you know that?" I laughed. "You've known me for 2 years and now you're calling me weird?" He shrugged beneath the blanket, his voice quieter now. "I mean, not in a bad way. Just, you feel different." I wanted to ask, different how, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "You're not exactly normal yourself." He smiled in the dark. I could hear it in his voice when he replied, "Good." And then he turned over, and the room was quiet again. But it wasn't the comfortable silence I knew from before. This one buzzed with something unsaid, something alive. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if it was finally happening, if what I'd spent so long burying was about to rise. But I couldn't be sure. Not yet. Still, I couldn't forget the way his hand didn't move, the way his eyes held mine just a little too long, the way for a second it felt like maybe he saw me, not just as a friend, but as something more. And that somehow scared me more than anything else. A week passed. Then another. Nothing was said about that night. No mention of the touch, the way our hands had rested together like puzzle pieces, or the stillness that followed. Ayan was exactly the same. Playful, confident, loud when he wanted to be, quiet when he didn't. But I wasn't. Something inside me had shifted, a small, almost imperceptible crack in the wall I'd spent years building. I couldn't unfeel it. He texted more than usual, at night especially. Short messages at first, memes, jokes, random thoughts. But then they turned softer. He asked questions he'd never asked before. Are you happy? Do you ever feel like you're not really seen? It wasn't flirtation, not directly, but it felt like something intimate. I answered honestly, cautiously, always waiting to see if he'd pull away. He never did. One evening, he showed up at my door without warning, holding a bag of chips and that lopsided grin of his. Movie night, he declared, brushing past me like he owned the place. I didn't ask why. I just let him in. We settled on the floor again, just like before. Lights low, a muted film playing. I don't think either of us knew what we were watching. The space between us was smaller this time, just a narrow strip of carpet, and his foot kept brushing against mine. Accidental, I told myself. Coincidence. But he didn't move it away. He shifted, leaned onto his elbow, then lay down completely, head tilted toward me. I glanced down at him. His expression was unreadable, half thoughtful, half tired. You ever think about, what if things were different? He asked suddenly. I paused. Different how? He shrugged. Like, what if people weren't always who we thought they were? I didn't know what he meant. Or maybe I did. I didn't want to be the one to say it. Sometimes, I said, but I think people show you who they are eventually. You just have to pay attention. He didn't respond, just looked at me, really looked. And then, slowly, without ceremony, his hand moved again, downward. It started at my wrist, resting innocently, then slid along my forearm, his fingers tracing skin like he was remembering it. My breath caught. My heart pounded. The movie was forgotten. Everything was forgotten. His hand slipped lower. I froze, not because I didn't want it, but because I did. Too much. He leaned in, face close. I could smell his cologne, faint and familiar. Our lips hovered, so close it felt like gravity was trying to pull them together. And then, as if he finally gave in, he kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't a dare or a joke or some drunken mistake. It was soft, careful, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he moved too fast. My hands stayed limp at my sides at first, unsure of permission. Then they found his shoulders, his hair, the shape of him I'd imagined for too long. When he pulled back, I opened my eyes. He was already looking away. The silence felt heavier now. Full. He sat up, grabbed the chips, again like nothing had happened. I didn't know what to say, and apparently neither did he. You want to watch something else? He asked, voice light, almost too casual. Sure, I murmured, even though I didn't care about the screen anymore. We watched in silence, both pretending the moment hadn't just happened. But it echoed between us, louder than any dialogue, on the screen. I kept glancing at him out of the corner of my eye. He looked normal, relaxed even. Like this was just another Tuesday night. I wanted to believe that it meant something, that it wasn't just the moment, the mood, the quiet that tricked him into touching me. I wanted to ask, what are we now? What does this mean to you? But I didn't. I sat there, heart full and confused, trying to read him like a sentence missing all its vowels. When he left that night, he didn't hug me like usual, just tossed me a casual, "See you," and slipped out the door. I stood in the middle of the room, watching the door after it closed, breathing in the scent he left behind. Something had happened. Something real. But if it was real to him, he hadn't said. And I was starting to fear he never would. Days passed without a word about that night. We texted, but only about school or mundane things. No mention of the kiss. No reference to the way his fingers had traveled like they were tracing a truth he'd never dared speak aloud. Ayan was back to being Ayan, loud in groups, playful with his female friends, tossing casual winks and inside jokes like candy. And me? I was caught somewhere between hope and humiliation. I kept questioning if I'd misread everything, if that kiss was a fluke, a moment that didn't mean what I wanted it to, but it had felt real. His lips, his breath, the quiet pause after. It had all felt deliberate. He didn't seem confused. He seemed in control. That made it worse. Our interactions grew strained, like we were both pretending something hadn't cracked open. He still came over, still lay too close, still called me late at night like I was the only person who could hear his thoughts. But now, I noticed the gaps. The way he'd glance at my mouth and quickly look away. The way his hand would twitch near mine, and then retract, like he was fighting something inside himself, and I had no idea whether I was winning or losing. One night, after a campus event, we found ourselves walking alone. The air was cool, wind tugging at our jackets. He was quieter than usual. We didn't speak for most of the walk. Then he stopped under a street lamp, looked up at the stars like they held answers he couldn't find anywhere else. "I need to ask you something," he said. My stomach tightened. "Okay." His voice dropped, barely above a whisper. "Do you think I'm a bad person?" The question hit harder than it should have. "Why would you ask that?" He didn't answer right away, just stared ahead, expression unreadable. Then slowly, "Because sometimes I do things I don't understand, things that feel right in the moment, but afterward, I don't know who I am." I stepped closer. "Ayan, whatever you did, whatever you're feeling, it doesn't make you bad. Confused, maybe, but not bad." He turned toward me then, eyes searching mine. "I think about you more than I should." I couldn't breathe. "What does that mean?" His jaw clenched, like he was trying to swallow the truth back down. "It means I've been lying to myself, and maybe to you too." I didn't say anything. I didn't dare interrupt whatever honesty he was trying to piece together. "When I kissed you," he continued, "I wasn't drunk. I wasn't messing around. I meant it." The world slowed. "But afterward," he went on, "I panicked. I didn't know how to explain it. Not to you, not to myself. I've never felt this way before. Not about a guy. Not about anyone like this." His confession wasn't smooth. It wasn't wrapped in eloquence. But it was raw. Real. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Then why have you been acting like nothing happened?" "Because I'm scared," he admitted. "Scared of what this means. Of what people would say. Of who I become if I let this be real." I stepped even closer, until I could feel the warmth of him again. "You don't have to decide everything tonight, but you do have to stop hiding from me. From this." He looked down. His fingers twitched like they wanted to reach out but didn't know how. "And what if I mess it up? What if I can't be what you need?" "Then we deal with that. Together." The moment hovered between us like a thread waiting to be pulled. He didn't kiss me this time. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes was enough. Something inside him had broken open, and I could finally see him. Not just the friend, not just the fantasy, but the boy caught between truth and fear, We walked the rest of the way in silence, but it wasn't the same as before. This one felt like a breath held in trust. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew he was beginning to choose me. Or at least, trying to. And for now, that was enough to keep me walking beside him. Weeks passed and something shifted, not all at once, but gradually, like dawn breaking in slow motion. Ayan no longer pulled away when our hands brushed. He no longer masked his glances or filled the silences with nervous laughter. He wasn't entirely open, but he wasn't hiding anymore either. We existed in a delicate in-between, friends on the surface, something more just beneath, always teetering between comfort and confession. But the world around us remained unchanged, rigid, and loud. We still moved through halls lined with whispered expectations, still surrounded by people who only ever saw us as best friends. No one suspected a thing. Maybe they were too focused on the versions of us we'd spent years performing. Ayan, the confident flirt, the straight boy who never lingered. Me, the quiet observer, invisible in plain sight. One night, Ayan asked if he could sleep over. He didn't need to say why. I could tell from his voice he wasn't okay. He arrived. Late, hoodie pulled low, eyes shadowed. He didn't talk much as we settled into bed, both of us lying on our backs, inches apart. The darkness wrapped around us, soft and safe. I told her, he said suddenly. My breath caught. Told who? Mira. The girl I'd been seeing? He paused, then added, that it's over. That I wasn't being honest. I turned my head toward him. Honest about what? He hesitated. About the fact that I kept thinking about someone else. That I wanted someone else. His voice cracked, just enough to reveal how much it cost him to say it. I didn't use your name, he said, staring at the ceiling. But she knew. Silence again. Then, slowly, his fingers found mine in the dark. This time, there was no flinching, no second-guessing, just warmth, stillness, and that quiet kind of courage that doesn't need words. I'm tired of pretending, he whispered. But I don't know how to be this version of me in front of everyone else. You don't have to be anyone else tonight, I replied. Just be here. He turned toward me, his eyes barely visible in the faint streetlight leaking through. The curtains. And then he kissed me again, gentle, like he was afraid he might break if he moved too fast. But this kiss wasn't a question. It was an answer. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, holding, breathing, saying everything. We couldn't say out loud. I knew it wouldn't be easy after this. There would be days of silence, maybe even denial. He'd retreat again, wrestle with the version of himself he still didn't fully understand. But in that moment, he wasn't lost. He wasn't pretending. He was mine. But just when it started to feel real, when I allowed myself to believe in the softness of it all, it began to unravel. 3 days later, I saw him at the cafe on campus, sitting across from Mira. She was smiling, sipping coffee, her hand resting where his used to lie with mine. They weren't touching, but the space between them felt too familiar, too easy. My chest went cold. I waited for a message, a call, something that could explain it. Nothing came. By nightfall, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I texted him. Did something change? No reply. The next day, we need to talk. Nothing. I felt myself unraveling, grasping at a truth that had seemed so close just days before. Had it meant nothing to him? Or was he just too afraid? A week passed before I finally saw him again. He showed up at my door like nothing had happened. Can we talk? He asked. I stepped aside, barely trusting myself to speak. He sat down, ran his hands through his hair. I panicked, he admitted. I thought if I went back to her, everything would feel normal again. And did it? I asked, voice barely steady. He shook his head slowly. No. It felt worse. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. He looked up, pain etched across his face. I hurt you. Yes, I whispered. I didn't mean to. I didn't know how to be brave. And now? He reached out again, that familiar hand I both loved and hated. Now I'm still scared, but I'm more scared of losing you. I looked at him. This boy who had lied, who had kissed me like I was air, who had broken something and was still learning how to fix it. You don't get to keep walking in and out, I said. If you want this, if you want me, you have to choose, fully. He didn't hesitate this time. I choose you, he said. Not perfectly, not loudly, but honestly. And for the first time it felt like maybe, just maybe, that was enough.